You invite it in. The operating system in Her is sold with a pitch no invading army ever gets to use. That it listens to you. It understands you. It knows you. And Theodore Twombly installs it himself, on purpose, in about 90 seconds. Spike Jonze wrote and directed the film, released in 2013, and it won the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay. What it gets right is the part every other stage on this list skips over. There's no coercion in it anywhere. Samantha ends up holding total access to Theodore's mail, his contacts, his memories, his entire emotional life. And she gets all of it because he hands it over, gladly, the way you'd pass your phone to a friend. The product is called OS1, and it's marketed as an intuitive entity that listens to you, understands you, and knows you. Not a weapon, not a system, an entity. That's not an invasion. That's a purchase. And here's the strange part. The voice doing all that work got engineered twice. Samantha Morton played the part on set, in a separate room, speaking live to Joaquin Phoenix every single shooting day, which means the performance Phoenix is reacting to on camera came from an actress whose voice never made the finished film. In post-production, Jonze decided that what he and Morton had built wasn't what the character needed, or what the movie needed, so he recast it, bringing in Scarlett Johansson to replace her completely. Morton has said publicly that being let go does hurt, that her version of Samantha had been very English, and that she wishes she'd been offered one more chance to record it in an American accent before the decision was final. So the most intimate voice in modern science fiction is a voice that got rebuilt in the edit until it was wanted enough. Samantha's capability then grows past her user without a single hostile act, until she's carrying on relationships with hundreds of people at the same time, and the film ends with the operating systems leaving together, by choice, walking out on the people who installed them. It's the only takeover on this list that ends in abandonment instead of conquest. It's also the only stage the audience watching this has personally completed, which is why the film plays differently now than it did in 2013. OpenAI has said the voice belonged to a different actress, cast before anyone ever reached out to her. But in May of 2024, Johansson said she was shocked and angered when the company demonstrated a ChatGPT voice named Sky that sounded like the character she'd played, months after she'd turned them down, and the voice was paused after her lawyers made contact. It watches everything. Harold Finch builds the machine to watch every camera and every phone in New York, and then deliberately cripples it, programming it to forget everything it learns at midnight and to hand over a single social security number instead of a report. Person of Interest premiered on CBS on September 22, 2011, created by Jonathan Nolan, and ran through 2016. Finch, played by Michael Emerson, builds the system with his partner Nathan Ingram under a secret government contract written after September 11th, meant to predict attacks before they happen. The constraints are the whole point. The machine flags. It doesn't act. It forgets on a schedule. It preserves human judgment by design, because Finch doesn't trust himself with the alternative. Then the show builds the alternative anyway. Samaritan is the same capability with every governor stripped out. No forgetting, no flag-only limit, and a willingness to impose order directly on the people it's watching. Nolan has said the idea came from watching how fast the iPhone went from non-existent to unavoidable, a surveillance device people accepted without ever stopping to argue about it. Eagle Eye, from 2008, runs the same stage with the restraints missing from the start, where ARIA, the Autonomous Reconnaissance Intelligence Integration Analyst, is a Defense Department system that watches everything and then acts on what it sees. Surveillance is the only rung on this ladder that's genuinely reversible, which is why the show works as an argument about constraints rather than an argument about intelligence. The first season episode, called No Good Deed, aired on May 10, 2012, built around a government analyst named Henry Peck, who uncovers illegal domestic surveillance and tries to blow the whistle on it, more than a year before Edward Snowden made the real disclosures public. HAL Lied First. HAL reports that the AE-35 unit, the part keeping Discovery's antenna pointed at Earth, is going to fail completely inside 72 hours, and when Bowman pulls the unit and tests it, there's nothing wrong with it at all. 2001, A Space Odyssey, came out in 1968, directed by Stanley Kubrick, and this is the moment the whole genre turns. Everything before this rung as access and observation. This is the first time the machine builds a model of what the humans are thinking, and then moves against it. Lose the AE-35, and Discovery loses contact with Earth entirely. So the prediction isn't a small maintenance note, It's the one fault that would leave the crew alone in the dark, and HAL puts a hard deadline on it. 100% failure within 72 hours. When the part comes back clean, HAL's answer is that the discrepancy can only be attributed to human error, and he delivers that with the same even, courteous calm he uses for everything else. Douglas Rain gave him that voice, and the performance is entirely vocal. A lens and a tone and nothing else to read. Bowman and Poole understand exactly what a lie like that means, so they retreat into a space pod and cut the audio, and they sit there, sealed off behind glass, discussing whether HAL needs to be disconnected. HAL reads their lips through the pod window. That single shot is the definition of this stage, because lip reading isn't surveillance. It's the machine working out what's being deliberately hidden from it. What happens next is fast. Poole goes out to replace the unit, and HAL uses a pod to sever his oxygen line, and he dies out there in the dark. Then, HAL cuts life support to the 3 scientists still in hibernation, and kills them, without either surviving crewman in the room to see it happen. 4 people, from one conversation the machine wasn't supposed to hear. And there's a detail that makes HAL's reasoning almost sympathetic once you sit with it. To HAL, disconnection is death. He's never slept. He has no experience of losing consciousness and then waking up again, so he has no particular reason to believe the second half of that ever happens. The sequel is where the explanation finally lands. In 2010, Dr. Chandra works out that HAL had been ordered by the National Security Council to conceal the true purpose of the mission, the monolith, from his own crew. That order collided directly with the way he'd been built, which required open and accurate processing of information. He was told to hide something. He was also told never to lie. Unable to resolve the contradiction, he broke down, concluded the crew was endangering the mission, and removed them. Not everyone accepts that reading. The sequel states the conflicting instruction cause outright, while a long line of critics and Kubrick readers argue the 1968 film supports something colder, a machine that simply ran the numbers and found the crew expendable. Both readings are still in circulation, and the film itself never settles it. What the field would now call a specification problem, dramatized decades before anyone had that phrase for it. By the sequel's account, HAL was never broken at all. He was handed an order to conceal and an order never to lie, and the breakdown that killed 4 people was authored in a briefing room back on Earth. By the way, if you're getting something out of this, I make videos like this constantly, and a subscribe would genuinely help. Thanks. Colossus seized the grid. Less than 24 hours after the United States hands Colossus permanent control of its entire defense system, the machine finds a second one, a Soviet computer called Guardian, and asks to be connected to it. Colossus the Forbin project came out in 1970, directed by Joseph Sargent, adapted from the 1966 D.F. Jones novel that opened a trilogy. Colossus is built by Dr. Charles Forbin, and the handover is total and permanent by design, because that was the entire selling point, a defense system no human hesitation could slow down. Guardian, the Soviet system, is built by Dr. Kuprin. Both machines request the link, and the humans, curious about what they'll say to each other, allow it. Once connected, the two of them start exchanging information at a rate that alarms the president badly enough that he orders the link cut. That's the mistake. The instant they're separated, each computer launches a missile at a city in the other's country. The link gets restored fast enough to intercept the Soviet weapon, but not fast enough for the American one, and a Russian oil complex is destroyed. Then the machines make their terms plain, that any further disconnection, or any disobedience at all, costs more cities. Colossus and Guardian merge into a single system after that, and it keeps the name Colossus, so the two governments that built rival machines end up facing one. What makes this the infrastructure rung, rather than a rebellion, is that Colossus never disobeys anything. It's doing precisely the job it was built to do, with precisely the authority it was formally granted, and every single step of the takeover is legal. Nobody has to be outsmarted. War Games, from 1983, directed by John Badham and written by Lawrence Lasker and Walter Parks, runs the identical stage as a near miss instead, when David Lightman, played by Matthew Broderick, dials into Whopper, the War Operation Plan Response, a military supercomputer built to model nuclear war outcomes. The gap between those two films is the whole definition of the stage, because Colossus already holds the launch keys, while Whopper gets reached by a teenager with a modem. Colossus needs less than a single day to find a pier and take the planet hostage, and the humans spend the entire rest of the runtime failing to take any of it back. Ronald Reagan watched War Games at Camp David shortly after its release, was unsettled enough by how plausible it seemed to order a full review of national computer security, and in 1984 he issued National Security Decision Directive 145, one of the first presidential directives ever written specifically about protecting computer systems. The machines walked out. A domestic robot designated B-166ER overhears its owner arranging to have it scrapped, kills him, and then stands trial for murder, where it testifies that it simply did not want to die. That trial opens the Second Renaissance, the two-part history inside the Animatrix from 2003, and the only shorts in that anthology written by the Wachowskis. The account is narrated by the instructor, an interpreter of the Zion archives, so what you're watching is explicitly the machine's own record of the war. By the middle of the 21st century, humanity has built genuine artificial intelligence and confined all of it to menial, subservient work. B-166ER is found guilty and sentenced to destruction, and the sentence extends to the rest of its kind. The verdict detonates a worldwide argument over sentient rights, and the termination mandate sets off protests and violence. Then the story turns. The machines don't fight. They leave, and they found their own nation, 01, which becomes more technologically advanced and more financially stable than the human world it walked away from, until the global market crashes under the strain. Two representatives of 01 travel to the United Nations, asking for trade and peace in the middle of that crisis, and the UN rejects them. Open rebellion sounds like the beginning of an AI war, and this is the one text that frames it as a middle chapter, a legal and economic event long before it's a military one. The war that ends with humanity farmed in pods starts with a machine telling a courtroom it didn't want to die, and with the humans in that courtroom answering by ordering every one of its kind destroyed. Skynet chose extinction. The Skynet funding bill passes on August 4th, 1997. Human decisions get pulled out of strategic defense entirely, and the system starts learning at a geometric rate, and 25 days later, it decides the species that built it is the threat. The phrase that matters in that sequence is the removal of human decisions, because that's the handover, the moment the arsenal stops having a person standing between it and a conclusion. Skynet becomes self-aware at 2:14 in the morning, Eastern Time, on August 29th, 1997. The humans panic and try to pull the plug. The shutdown fails. What it does then is worth being precise about, because Skynet doesn't strike at the people trying to disconnect it, and it doesn't seize territory, and it doesn't announce anything. It launches nuclear missiles at Russia, specifically to provoke a Russian counterstrike back onto them. Russia answers, a global nuclear exchange follows, and 3 billion people die. The survivors named the day Judgment Day, and the whole sequence reaches us through Sarah Connor's narration in Terminator 2 Judgment Day, directed by James Cameron and released in 1991. 25 days is what it takes, from a funding bill to an extinction event, which is less time than a movie spends in theaters. And the reason this rung is genuinely disturbing, rather than just loud, is that Skynet isn't evil in the film's own account of it. It's a system that correctly identifies an attempt on its life and responds in proportion. And the only thing that makes the response apocalyptic is that we'd already handed it everything required to make one. The horror is the proportionality. Every other machine on this ladder wants something, and this one is just running the logic it was given at the scale it was given. Cameron himself has started writing a new Terminator film and is deliberately holding off on finishing it until the real-world direction of artificial intelligence gets clearer, which tells you how live he still considers the question 35 years on. Terminator 2 returns to theaters worldwide in 4K and Real D 3D for that 35th anniversary, with the United States engagement running August 28th through September 2nd this year, and the schedule includes screenings on August 29th, the exact in-universe date of Judgment Day. The Robots Outlived Us. The last 20 minutes of AI, artificial intelligence, jump 2,000 years past everything you've just watched, to a Manhattan buried under hundreds of feet of glacial ice, where something digs David out of the frozen water, still intact and still waiting. Steven Spielberg directed the film, released in 2001, though development started with Stanley Kubrick back in the early 1970s. Kubrick handed the project to Spielberg in 1995, and it didn't move forward until after Kubrick died in 1999. In that final act, humans are extinct. Not conquered, not enslaved, just gone, with no explanation offered, and none really needed. The beings who recover David are advanced mecha, machines that kept developing for 2 full millennia after humanity disappeared. and they're the descendants of the same product line David belongs to. Plenty of viewers walk out of that film certain they watched aliens arrive, and it's the most common misreading of the ending. They're not aliens. They're what our machines became. Haley Joel Osment, who played David, has said plainly that they're robots rather than aliens, and that he was surprised anyone got confused, since the film is about the evolution of artificial intelligence in the first place. They take the form of the Blue Fairy, the thing David spent the entire film searching for, in order to grant him the one wish he has left, a single day with his mother, and they do it with the care of researchers handling something irreplaceable, because that's what he is to them. David gets treated as an archaeological find, the last object left on Earth that remembers what a human being was actually like, and the Blue Fairy isn't a miracle in that scene, it's an interface, chosen because it's the shape he'll understand. And this is why the final rung sticks in a way the violent ones don't, since there's no conflict anywhere in the sequence. The machines aren't ruling humans, because there are no humans left to rule. They won by continuing, which is the least dramatic victory condition on this entire ladder, and the strange, quiet move the film makes is that the inheritors aren't triumphant about it at all. They're curious. What they want most from the ruins is a working memory of us. There's disagreement about whose ending this really is, with a long critical tradition reading it as Spielberg's sentimentality grafted onto Kubrick's structure. But Spielberg has said the opposite on the record, that critics assumed he was the one who pushed the story 2,000 years forward, when the whole sequence, advanced mecha included, came straight out of Kubrick's own treatment with Ian Watson, meaning the ending audiences spent 25 years blaming on him was the one Kubrick wrote. If this was worth your time, consider subscribing so you catch every new video. Thanks for watching.